chapter 8. We're going to read from verses 1 to 14. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time I saw in the vision. And it so happened while I was looking that I was in Shushan, the citadel, which is in the province of the Lamb. And I saw in the vision that I was by the river Ulai. There I lifted my eyes and saw, and there standing beside the river was a ram that had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other. And the higher one came up last. I saw a ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that no animal could withstand him, nor was there any who could deliver from his hand. And he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west, across the surface of the whole earth, without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram. He was moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, broke his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled him. And there was no one who could deliver the ram from his hand. Therefore the male goat grew very great, and when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in its place 4 notable ones came up towards the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts and some of the stars to the ground, and it trampled him. It even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all this and prospered. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the certain one who was speaking, "How long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifice and transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot?" And he said to me, "For 2,300 days, and then the sanctuary shall be cleansed." So we're going to stop right there. We have the interpretation on the latter half of this passage from verses 15 to the end of the chapter, verse 27. But this is a very interesting passage, and let's look at it in context. First of all, I will call your attention to the most important fact regarding the structure of Daniel, originally written in 2 distinct languages. The first chapter and verses 1 to 3 of chapter 2 are all in Hebrew. From chapter 2:4 to the end of chapter 7, the language is Chaldean or Babylonian. And finally, the balance of the book then returns to Hebrew. It's almost as if Daniel felt called to write 2 separate messages. The first message would be to the Jewish community. And so it includes his first chapter and the latter from chapters 8 onward to the end of the book. The center portion, the portion that describes Daniel's life and his constant conflict with authority figures, is actually in the language of the day. So everyone, including the locals who spoke Chaldean or Babylonian, would understand. Now that tells me something about Daniel. And it tells me something about you and me, and that is this. We do have 2 separate languages. Have you noticed that? We have church language. We talk about being born again, and that is absolutely true, straight out of Scripture. But use that conversation with somebody who is not a believer, and they haven't a clue where you're going. They might have heard the term, but they don't get it, because what does the Bible say about those who are outside of the faith? Dead in trespasses and sins. They that are without the Spirit cannot receive the things of the Spirit. So this is powerful that we remember that we do have a church language or a Christian cultural language. We talk about things that others just don't get. So when somebody comes in that's not a believer or is outside of the regular, maybe a new believer, they're going, "What did they just say?" Now, for a long time, I thought circumcision was all about going in a circle. And, if you don't do your studies, you don't understand that there's a lot more going on than you realize. And this is very true of us. So Daniel had two languages. He had the language of the Chaldeans, and so he describes how mighty God is and how God is constantly stepping on the kings, as it were. First, Nebuchadnezzar, because Neb doesn't understand his dream. In fact, he can't even remember his dream. And then it is only through Daniel's beseeching the God of heaven and then declaring to the king, it's not me, it's the God of heaven who has given you this dream and the interpretation. And he says, and you, O king, are the head of gold. Of course, you know what happens when somebody tells you that? You pay them a compliment and they go, oh, give me another compliment. So what does Nebuchadnezzar do? He builds a statue to himself. It's a gold statue, 90 feet high. And it's a beautiful statue if you like gold statues that are 90 feet high. But it was an idol, and it was designed for worship of him, because he says, well, I'm the head of gold. So he goes ahead and goes on to this whole thing where he suddenly realizes God says to him, wait a minute. Pride goes before a fall. God is opposed to the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And you, O king, are proud. And so he will do that to every proud individual. He will bring you and I down until we get to the point where we're looking up to see the bottom of the boat and we say, help, I need help here. And that is what mercy, calling for mercy, is all about. So many people think that confession and true faith is about some sort of a mechanical act that comes by signing a card, by walking to the front of a stadium, by going before a pastor or a pastoral committee, by going through confirmation. It has none of that above. It has everything to do with saying, Lord, save me. Getting to the point where salvation is really about the Lord and you don't participate in the process of saving. It's like a fireman. I was talking to somebody this morning and he said, yeah. He says, can you imagine somebody saying, I'm in the fire here and I need help. And, there's a fireman. Oh, hey, can you help? No, don't. Go ahead and save yourself. Well, there's so many people trying to do that today. And the Lord is not only the fireman, but he's the one that not only gets up to the fire, but he grabs you, throws you on his back, and carries you out of there. And then he carries you all the way to heaven. And so I love the illustration of the man or woman who designed that footprint story. And they said, the times when I was at my lowest, I saw only one set of prints, those are the times that the Lord carried me. Well, actually, he carries us every day of our lives, not just on those days. And the moment we stop thinking that he's carrying us, that's pride, that's self-centeredness, and that is actually the opposite of all that he wants to do in our lives. There's Daniel, and he's now at the end of his life. And in Daniel chapter 8, we haven't got quite to the story of Daniel chapter 5. You see, Daniel's book is not chronological. If you read it and you think it's happening you're going to be totally confused, because he makes it clear it was the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar. That's the story from Daniel chapter 5, the writing on the wall. So here he is, 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar, the last king in Nebuchadnezzar's line, the head of gold. And now we have Darius the Mede, who's coming. And he's going to completely defeat the Nebuchadnezzar rule in 24 hours. And you remember the account how that he stopped the river and his army went right underneath the walls and surprised them in the midst of their revelry. And they basically said, oh, I guess we surrender. And they knew it was coming because Daniel had already given the interpretation. Meeny, meeny, tinkle, upsurin. You've been weighed in the balances. You're found wanting. The enemy is coming. This was the story. And the 3rd year, this has not yet happened yet. This is still where Belshazzar is still ruling. So here is God speaking to Daniel in a vision. To whom does the Lord give visions? I was studying this out, trying to figure out why it was that Daniel, of all people, gets all of these amazing visions. Like if you want to look at people that got visions. Daniel probably has more visions that he interprets, like Nebuchadnezzar's 2 dreams and Belshazzar's writing on the wall, and then all of these other visions from Daniel chapter 7 onward. Why so many? Think about it. He went through the waters and got his credentials. Daniel's taken out of Jerusalem. He's taken from into a foreign land. He's made into a eunuch, not a pleasant moment. He's made into a person that has to speak Babylonian, not Hebrew. He's given a new name, nothing like he wants. And he's forced into new cultural things like eating bacon. Well, I'm not sure if they were big on bacon, but we do know they were eating unclean food. And so as a result, he starts walking the walk and talking the talk. He doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. And sometimes I'm sure he's going, oh Lord, what is going to happen here? I got a guy who's telling me that we've got to eat this food and I just don't want to do it. And then in chapter 2, he says, I just got notified, Lord, that they're going to kill me. I didn't do anything, but you know, there's a dream that the king has, but he doesn't know what it is, and he wants us to interpret a dream that he doesn't tell us. That doesn't seem fair. Life isn't fair, but it is good when it's with the good God. And so he takes these troubles, and he takes his difficulties, he takes his experiences, the going through the fires of that fiery furnace that he didn't experience, but he certainly was intimately acquainted with his 3 friends who did. And then, of course, in Daniel chapter 6, which is in Darius's line, that's the one that comes after Belshazzar, he still has to face the lions. So when you're reading this, he hasn't faced the lions yet. Did you catch that? He's still got more traction. He's an old man, but he's got more to do for God. Don't ever let our age stop us from serving the Lord. Don't. Because how old was Abraham when he was called? Even less, I think, but still, he was called in his 70s, I think, when he was called. But there were others. There was Moses, who was 80. There was many people who, look at Caleb. He wanders for 40 years in the wilderness. And as an 85-year-old, he's looking at that city of David, and he says, give me this mountain. Give me this mountain. I can do this. I'm 85 now. I'm as strong as when I was 40 years ago. So what we should remember is age should not deter us from being a servant of God. He sees this message. Daniel is being given a message because he's willing to trust and obey. Just like the hymn writer, there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, to trust and obey. God wants to do great things with each one of you, each one of us. And he's not restricting that, but he wants us to trust him and to follow him according to his word. Daniel was prepared to do that. I think that's the reason why he experienced what he experienced. He had separation, subjugation, physical suffering, confrontation, downfall of the king, lion's den, and is now suffering the vision. Now, lion's den hasn't happened, so we're kind of jumping ahead there. So, let me ask you these questions very quickly. Can you tell me who gave these quotes? Number 1, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Okay, let's give a second quote. Wherever you are, be all there. Live to the hilt in every situation you believe to be the will of God. Number 3, when the time comes to die, make sure that all you have to do is die. Number 4, forgive me for being so ordinary while claiming to know so extraordinary a God. Number 5, Lord, give me firmness, not hardness, steadfastness without dogmatism, love without weakness. Number 6, I pray for you that all your misgivings will be melted into thanksgivings. Number 7, remember the shadow of a thing casts often far exceeds the size of the thing itself. The thing itself will be but a speck when seen from beyond. And number 8, oh, that he would restore us often with that aspect from beyond to see a thing as he sees it. Remember, he deals with us as sons. So do you know all these quotes where they came from? Well, they actually came from all the same person, Jim Elliot. This man had a very short life, but he had a great impact for God with the Alca Indians. And he was the one of the 4 others that gave their lives and were martyred on the river, and there their blood was shed, that the Alcas would come to know that Jesus shed his blood for them. Ultimate love. Daniel knew something of that ultimate love, and he's already served faithfully. He's in this place called Shushan in the citadel. We don't know whether he was actually in there in his vision or whether he was actually there and had the vision. That's not completely clear. But this much is clear. He sees a ram with 2 horns emerging. Now remember, he's still under the rule of Belshazzar. So the ram was the symbol for the Medo-Persian Empire. And the Medo-Persian Empire hasn't come yet, but it's coming. And it's pushing westward, northward, and southward, and no animal could stand. And then he sees this male goat floating across from Greece, across without its feet touching the ground. It's so fast, it's moving, flying as it were. And it comes across. And the second has a horn that comes up between its eyes. And then the second male goat, it says it has the ability to confront the ram and rage against the ram and breaks the 2 horns. So there's no power in the ram to withstand it. And the male goat grows very great. Now we know by actual reading, not by prophetic understanding, but by simple reading that you can discover yourself, that the prophecy is clear. For as he was speaking with me, verse 18, the angel says to Daniel, the ram, verse 20, which you saw having 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. You don't have to be a prophetic scholar to get that. It's there right in scriptures. The good news is most of prophecy is like that. The second part, the goat, is described right after that. And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. Now there's a whole group of people that would say this is so accurate that Daniel's book must have been written after the history actually happened. And there's a whole group of critics that make that claim. And you will over and over again find there will be critics who will make bogus claims thinking that they're trying to distract from the truthfulness of God's word. Why? Because they love the darkness more than the light. It's as simple as that. They will not come to the light, as Jesus himself said. And so this passage has its own interpretation. But look at the end. It says the horn, and Alexander the Great was that horn that came. And he came so quickly, and he has consolidated the entire world under his control. And then what happens? He passes away suddenly. And his kingdom is divided up to the 4 points of the compass. And 4 generals take over, just as the scripture says. There would be 4 little horns that come out of the one horn. And that was the 4 kingdoms. Now, the 4 kingdoms that came out of that were the kingdoms that controlled Egypt, the kingdom that controlled Turkey, the kingdom that controlled, Egypt, Turkey, Syria, and Asia Minor, and the sovereignty of Macedonia and Greece. There were Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Cassander. Basically, the 2 that we would draw attention to would be those who had control over Syria and Asia Minor and the modern day control of Turkey. Why do we say that? Because they were in relationship to Israel, and they show up a little bit later on. Now, in this passage, we have a rather interesting prophecy. Did you catch that in verse 14? How long would the giving of the sanctuary and the host be trampled down? And he says, for 2,300 days. I'm going to give you the 1 minute explanation that was given for that. Well, yeah, it will only take about 1 minute. A man by the name of Miller in the 1800s looked at these and said, oh, I get this. The end of time is being described. This Antichrist, this one who comes and destroys against the Prince of Princes, and will be broken without human means. And the vision and the evenings and the mornings which is told is true, and it refers to the many days in the future. This is right now. He said that in the 1800s. And he started a movement. In fact, so big was his movement that he predicted that the end of days would happen in the 1840s. 1840s. His name was Miller, and all those who followed him became Millerites. And the start of the Seventh-day Adventist movement, yes, very well. And not only the Seventh-day Adventist, one of their preachers who was involved, who was very disappointed when Jesus didn't return as predicted, started another movement. His name was C.T. Russell, and started the movement we now know as the Jehovah's Witnesses. So there was a number of people who followed after these prophetic teachings. And I wish they just read the complete works of Josephus, which is still available. And here is a historian from the first century who wrote about the history from Genesis onward of the nation of Israel. He was a first century Jewish author who even writes about Jesus in his book. And I'll leave you to look at that. But he talks about what this 2,300 days is. And the 2,300 days is very simple. It is about 6.5 years. And when Josephus looks at it, he discovers that in the years 163 to 167 or so, there was a period of 6 years, there was a period of time when Antiochus Epiphanes, the fourth general or the fourth son of the Syrian king that arose out of Alexander the Great, came forward and he declared himself God. He sacrificed a sow on the altar in Jerusalem, desecrated the altar, and stopped the sacrifice for, 6 years and so many months. And Judas Maccabeus, the general of the Jewish army that revolted when this happened, fought with him for many years until they cleansed the temple. And yes, they cleansed the temple, and it happened on the 25th of December, Hanukkah. Yes, we celebrate it as Christmas, but the Jewish people have been celebrating the Festival of Lights as Hanukkah for many, many, many years. Interesting enough, they also say that there was a miracle that happened when the major candlestick that was in Jerusalem, they were searching for oil that had been sanctified by the priesthood. They couldn't find the oil, and they went and got enough oil to start it, and it miraculously went going for 8 days. And it was that festival that Jesus came into and said, I am the light of the world. Yes, Jesus was and is the great light that has come into this world that we might find life. And so as we look at this, we see the story of a man who was willing to follow God and was given the prophecies. Over the years, these 2,300 days have been variously interpreted by many different people. But I'd like to suggest that they were already fulfilled and you don't need to look for another 2,300 days. However, you do find that all of the descriptions of this Antichrist described in verses 25 to the end of the chapter seem to fit with what Jesus was talking about when he says in Matthew 24, as was spoken of by Daniel the prophet. And he speaks about the abomination of desolation. In other words, he alludes to the same exact experience, but he talks about it as coming in the future. And so we have what's called the law of double fulfillment. Have you heard of that one before? What it means is that there is prophecy that gets fulfilled not just once, but twice in God's timetable. An example of that would be Malachi's prophecy that Elijah would come before the Lord, before the Messiah, before the day of the Messiah. And when Jesus was asked that question by the disciples, he said, Elijah has come, referring to John the Baptist. But he said, but he will come. And then you have the account, only seen by 3 other men, of the Mount of Transfiguration, which is, where is Elijah? He's right there on the mountain with Jesus, along with Moses. And so there is a sense of double fulfillment that occurs. We'd like to say that the Matthew account described here in Daniel chapter 5, or Daniel chapter 8, verses 25 to 26, seems to suggest the same passage that Paul is referring to in Thessalonians. Now, Paul says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 that the day of the Lord will not come except he be revealed. And he goes on to describe the one who will take his place in the temple of God, declaring himself that he is God. There are those who believe that the temple of God will be rebuilt. Many, many people believe that that is actually part of one of the prophetic calendars. I'm not sure where I stand on that, I'll be quite frank, because I do know the temple of God is being built, and it is you and me. Paul said that you are the temple of the Holy Spirit, you are the temple of God, and he repeats it not once, not twice, but 3 times in the book of 1 Corinthians twice, and in 2 Corinthians once. So the truth is that whether it is a person that will come in the church, like what we call the universal church, the nominal church, and declare himself to be God, or whether it will be someone who actually develops a building that will establish peace and declare themselves as God. I really am not uncertain on that point. But I do know this, God's word is clear. It will happen. According to his will, it will happen. And so as we look at this today, I trust that you have been challenged to look into the book of Daniel once more. Will you understand it? If you do, come and tell me what you understood. Okay, because it's deep. But the good news is it's not so deep that we cannot come to understanding. And so as we look at these passages, they also remind us that we need the Lord. In August the 14th, 2003, yes, I think all of you were there, there was something happened. Can anybody remember what happened on August the 14th, 2003? Becky can't be a part of that, though, because she probably knows, but she's not going to say. Anybody remember what happened? How about the power shutdown? The great power shutdown. Do you remember that? Where were you when the power stopped, when the lights went out? It was a muggy August the 14th day. It was hot. And all of a sudden the power went down. I remember me phoning my neighbor who was down the street. And I said, do you have any power? And he said, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think I must have done something and blew the transformer on our block. And I said, what? What do you mean? Yeah, I was using my hammer, my hammer drill, and I was working in the basement. And as I was drilling away, all of a sudden the entire house just shut down. I says, no, I don't think it was you. I don't think that was you. But that was very kind of you to say you were sorry. But and we discovered that the entire Northeast, 50 million people were out of power. It was the biggest single shut down for many, many years. In fact, for the past 30 years. What happened? Well, it was a glitch in the power grid in New York that affected New York City, Toronto, and the entire Northeast. It happened from Ohio, actually. And what it reminded me of this. When that happened, there were lots of people who said, no problems. We walk out of the subway on the tracks, we walk up the stairs, and we'll walk home. Some people walked up to 8 miles up to get to their home. They got to their home. They said, oh, there's my apartment. It's on the 8th floor. They took out their little electronic key, and lo and behold, they couldn't get in. You see, they had zeal. They had effort. They trudged for hours to get home, but they couldn't get in. Now, though I tell you this story, because not only is it true, but it reminds me of so many religious people, even in our Christian community, who are obeying God's word as they understand it. They're trying to be faithful as they understand it. They're trying to live according to God's law as they understand it, but they're going to utterly fail at the end of days because it's not about God's law. It's about God's Son. He died that he might make a way available. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so Jesus is our answer. He is the one who brings us through. He is the power that activates all the opening doors. I am the door, he said. By me, if anyone enter in, he shall go in and out, find pasture. And so let us not be one of those who have heard the word, have sought to obey the word, but hear these words, I never knew you, depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. When Corrie ten Boom was concerned about her coming fears, she came to her father and said this statement. She said, I'm afraid. She was going through what was going to be a very hard time as a child. And she was going through the Second World War. And he came in, as he stepped through the door, as it says, Corrie burst into tears and said, I don't want you to die. You can't die. And she was worried about her father, who was the main caregiver in their house. And he sat down on this narrow bed of Corrie's and said, so when you and I go to Amsterdam, when do I give you the ticket? She sniffled and said, well, it's just before we get on the train. Exactly. Our wise Father in heaven knows what we're going through, and don't run ahead of him, Corrie. When the time comes, some will have to die. And you will look into your heart and find the strength you need just in time. And why can we do that? Not because of our own abilities. Because out of the heart of man proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witnesses, blasphemies. My heart is full of all that, and so is yours, because without Christ, that is the sinful heart. But if your heart has been made new, there's the heart that can trust in the Savior. And he says, I will give you a new heart and a new spirit, and I will write my law on your heart and on your minds. And you will obey, not because of legalism, but because of love. And so Paul says in Romans 10, if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. For whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. I trust that you and I have called on the name of the Lord. I trust that everyone who hears these words has called on the name of the Lord. But as believers, are we continuing to trust him for every step of our lives and every day? May we do so as we move forward this day and into the future.